proximity of being happy.
I have to remind you to be happy when we come on. It's got a big smiles when we come on.
Big smile.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, look at you! You're all dressed up. We didn't coordinate today.
I just have a nice blouse on. That's all. And
All
I
right.
curled my hair.
Okay.
Only because I had it up in a wrap all day, so I had the weird, funky thing going on. So I had
me
to
too.
Put a little curl in.
Yeah.
Happy Monday.
Okay.
Happy Monday.
Yep.
Hope you all had a great weekend. We were up in Pushlinch on Saturday at the CSB meeting. We got to see our dear friend Rena Melka and Dominic from Freedom Lovers as they did a 2-hour presentation on biodigital convergence. And we got to meet all kinds of market vendors who are creating their own products and organic farming and greenhouses on their property, et cetera. And it was a really great, informative day, and I think we made a few more friends.
Oh yeah, friends everywhere we go. Yeah, it was a good night. We got some really cool stuff from the market, and we got to try out. We should have put a picture of it. We got to try out our brand new portable studio, which we're getting ready for June. So that was fun.
If you're on our TikTok, I posted it there, and on Facebook and Instagram, our new studio, our new traveling studio. We picked it up Friday, so that was exciting.
Yes. Yeah. Fun. Looks really slick. Where to go? Like we were looking at doing a deep dive tonight, and there's just the world is exploding right now.
It is exploding. We normally don't like to talk about clickbait, but so many big things are going on that it's hard not to at least acknowledge them before we get into our deep dive of what nobody else is talking about.
Yeah.
It is super important and going to affect all of us in a drastic way.
Right. And I wrote it in the description. It has a lot to do with OSFI, but we'll get into that. So I think we're entering into the Marxism phase.
Oh, 100%.
We have anti-Israel protesters celebrating the deaths of people. These are all the people who were so adamant and hardcore on ceasefire.
Yeah.
Ceasefire. And now they're just all hell-bent for war. So they were celebrating in the streets of Toronto not too long ago. Awesome. Yeah. Just, you got to know when I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something to keep an eye on. Now, these are all distractions, of course, political theater and stuff. That's something to keep an eye on. And then this is here's a couple examples. 3 ships, not just one, have hit bridges in different countries now and taken bridges down. Not only that, a whole bunch of barges got released.
Yes.
I think in the lower states, right?
Yeah, it was in the States. There was videos everywhere going, what is this? What is going on? Massive backups. There was an oil spill as well in Iowa, all the way down to Missouri through the lakes. Nitrogen fertilizer. Imagine that. The stuff farmers need to grow food. Boop. Over 700,000 gallons, or is it 700? No, over 700,000 fish dead.
Oh, no.
Dead.
You're right. It can be used for other things. Just ask Timothy McVeigh.
Yes.
So that's highly toxic.
So many distractions. But
then multiple planes were hit by mysterious GPS jamming over Europe. So that's going on. So I think we're entering into a new chapter of our ridiculousness.
I think we can probably officially say World War III. I know we've been saying it in small circles for a long time that we are in World War III, which is a nuclear war. The attack on the nuclear family is what I've been saying. But we are now starting to see bombs and missiles and hacking into or what appears to be hacking into airplane instruments and big cargo ship instruments, taking out bridges and who knows what else.
Yep. 2 things that did not happen, which were big news today, was the weather system, the National Weather System in the US. Their radars did not go down. That was false. And I am sad to report that Klaus Schwab is alive and well. So,
He's alive. Is he well?
Well, yeah.
Depends on who you are and how you define well.
Well, his upload of consciousness into his clones, because all the top globalists get more than one now. Yeah, they're doing okay.
They're doing fine. They're doing just fine. And King Charles is still alive, as far as we know. As far as we know.
Yeah, hanging on like a thread.
Still alive, as far as we know.
Yeah. Well, we'll revisit that later. Yeah. So we and then the Israel-Iran thing is going on. What do you pick? There's so much to pick and choose from in this story.
I don't know. Well, Israel and Iran, or Iran is attacking Israel, but then Jordan and Yemen jumped in. All their drones attacking the sphere that protects Israel, and then lo and behold, they managed to get it through, or at least distract on one side. Well, another team came through and actually made it through on the other side.
Right. Yeah. And we're not falling for the one side or the other debate. We're not. Half of it is propaganda, the other half are lies, and then whatever's left is we don't know. So we're not getting into the political theater of it. It's all orchestrated. But what a thing! It was actually quite brilliant what they did. They overloaded the system with drones and sent drones in. And as the Iron Dome was taking out these drones, they sent in their missiles at a different speed. And most of those got taken down. US and UK also scrambled jets to help defend the airspace. So in case you don't know, the Iron Dome is the name given to the Israeli air defense system that is the most advanced air defense system. When you got enemies at every gate, you gotta have your bases covered. So if you saw footage of it, these drones were coming in like crazy and just getting popped like flies, as they came in, right? So they're getting
pretty impressive.
It was, but what a brilliant strategy. Again, not attaching anything else to it than that.
No, because at the end of the day, a crap ton of innocent people are caught in the middle.
Right, exactly right. And so what do we pick with that? Because this is something to keep an eye on for sure, distraction or not. This is one of those ones that you got to keep an eye on it. And so we took the angle of, well, what is our government saying? And Anthony Housefather is like screaming anti-Semitism. So within the liberal ranks. And then Angelina Jolie got up and she answered a few questions.
I must say that it is clear that Canada is pushing for de-escalation in the region, and that is a coordinate message that we're all sending to G7 countries.
Just to clarify, Minister, is one of the options on the table, can be very clear for Canadians, is one of the options on the table designating the IRGC as a terrorist organization? Is that an active option you're considering?
The Prime Minister already answered that question back in January, and
Now let's just stop there for a second. This has not been an ongoing issue since January. Like, she's been like, oh, we kind of looked at this for 4 months. This has been since day one that they got into office, and people are saying like, these people are terrorists. IRGC, I think the Iranian, I don't know, Michael Chuchong maybe knows, and he'll pop in and tell us. But anyway, they're designated worldwide as terrorists, but Canada refuses to do that. And remember, Canada bowed down when Iran shot down a Ukrainian plane.
Yes,
Ukrainian, right?
Yes, they did.
And Canada did nothing, right? So, there he is, here to correct me.
It's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Thank you very much.
Viva Fry made that mistake the other day too, and when he was interviewing Salman. Simo. And
wow.
he corrected him because so nothing to do with Iran itself.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And I think that's probably, you hit the nail on the head right there, because it stands for Islamic, and that's why they don't want to do that. There's a subset and they're labeled as terrorists, but this one isn't. So this has been going on for a long time, and I just want to point out that when the January 6th thing happened, it took them 2 weeks to label the Proud Boys as terrorists, as domestic terrorists. 2 weeks. And they hadn't done anything
I was going to say, and our Proud Boys weren't even there. They weren't part of anything, and yet they got labeled as terrorists. But talk about another country. Nope.
Yeah, so the Proud Boys in the U.S. were involved, but ours weren't, and ours got labeled.
He already said that we were actively working on it. That being said, as of now, under my purview, what we can do is quickly designate key individuals that are part of these activities that are criminal activities against Israelis and also against our interests, and that is why on my side I'll be working on this issue.
When you say de-escalate, are you taking the position, is Canada taking the position that Israel should not respond to this attack by Iran?
We think that it is important that Israel be able to protect itself. It has done so over the weekend, and we are clearly pushing for de-escalation, and we need to make sure that the conflict doesn't extend to the region. So that is why I've been clear to my counterpart in Israel, please take the win.
Let's just stop with that right there. Please take the win. An airbase got decimated. Some of those missiles did get through, so please take that as a win.
Right? I don't. People are dying. Take it as a win.
Exactly.
But she would say that because she's part of the depopulation agenda. So to her, that's a win.
Right, Angelina Jolie, or Sophie 2, as I like to call her.
Her name is not Angelina. Just
Melanie.
So y'all know.
We know it's Melanie.
And make sure that we can work together to bring back peace in the region.
Pressure, what does it look like if you're not going to designate it as a terrorist organization?
Can you start again, Rafi?
Sure. What does maximum pressure look like if you're not going to take the step to designate it as a terrorist organization? What will you do instead?
I've said that we are actively working on this. The Prime Minister answered the question back in January, and the Minister of Public Safety is on this issue. What I can do under my own purview, in my own responsibility, under my own legislation, is designating people and making sure that they're sanctioned. And that's what I'm working on, because we've already sanctioned dozens of key RGC officials. We need to go further, and that's why I'll be working with G7 countries as I'm heading to Italy later today.
So back in January, when they shot down a plane, that's what terrorists do. Are they terrorists? Nope. No, we're working on that. But again, it took them 2 weeks to label the Proud Boys, right? So how long are they? Are you going to correct me again?
No. Did you notice that she left out the I?
Yes, I did.
Yes,
I did.
Right? They're trying to
downplay it,
whitewash
right?
the Islamic
or make people not realize what it actually means, because a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, thank you. That was good. That was good. So we're going to see lots of stuff coming out of the G7 summit that they've gone to in Italy right now. So we'll wait to hear about that. But this, again, is one of those things to keep an eye on. Israel is not known for taking the win.
No.
As she says.
No.
Right. So retaliation. But I don't see where that's going to be advantage for them, because they're up against several countries, not just one at this point. Like all of the Middle Easterns, they're waiting to jump in on this. And perhaps this is political theater to bring about peace in the Middle East for a little bit so we can build a temple, but more on that on another Bible show.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is happening, and this is why we call them distractions, because whenever your eyes are moving around to something else going on, always make sure that you keep at least one eye on the money. Always on the money, because that's where we're getting distracted from.
I can't. Wait, I don't understand. What are you talking about?
So I will either give you a bank draft, or if you're gonna get cash, I will need an invoice for the car purchase.
Why? No, I'd like to. It's for the car's payments for in cash. I can't use a bank draft.
Are you buying from like a private?
Yeah, it's private.
person?
It's literally from my friend.
From your friend?
Yeah, but he wants it in cash.
Can he give you like anything that you're purchasing from him?
No, I don't. You don't need that, bro. What is it? I'm only asking for 3. What is this? It's my money. I'm allowed to withdraw from my own bank account.
Yeah, so I can.
You said what's the maximum limit you can give a withdrawal to a customer? It's $3,000 on the day. You've already mentioned that multiple times.
Yeah, not today.
Why not today?
Today I would need a bank draft, or I would get an invoice.
But why you don't? You need proof of what it is. Why is that? And why is that? Why is that? Why do you need me to tell you what it is? Why do you need? What kind of proof is that? I bring in a note. Like what? How is that? What is that going to change? I don't understand.
So that would
You need to give me my money.
buying.
I'm not taking a bank draft. I would like cash, please.
Yeah, I won't be able to give you cash today.
Okay, wait. I'm just gonna sit here until you give me cash. So I'm not gonna leave.
Okay, if you want, we can have a sit there.
And then do what? Who am I waiting for?
I can get the manager to talk to you.
Well, yeah, get the manager because this is it's unbelievable.
So that's RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, one of the big six. And I don't know how many times we've been saying it. Get your money out of the big six.
Get your money out, because if you don't, they are going to take it on you.
Right. And our whole second part of the show is going to be exactly why you should be doing that. But that was RBC. And basically the upshot was he was taking his money out of the bank, $3,000. They asked him why. He said it's for a car. And they said, no, we can't release it unless you have a promissory note or for some sort of proof that that's where the money is going to be going. Exactly right, which is ridiculous, of course.
Yeah, but we also know a local bank here, our dear friend Larry went to take out cash as well. Now, I think he was taking out $6,000 cash, and he got the same rigmarole that this gentleman got. And they wanted him to sign all these papers and this, that, and the next thing. And he said, no, just give me my money. I'm not signing anything. It's my money. Give it to me. But I think he was in the bank, what did he say, like 20, 30 minutes, just trying to withdraw his own money. And in Larry's case, he refused to say why. Now, this gentleman said buying a car, but at the end of the day, it's your money. It's none of their business why.
Todd Michael Harris, good friend from Uninformed Consent, filmmaker extraordinaire. It was the Royal Bank that killed my doctor's friend's mortgage because they didn't like his stance on the COVID-19 flu. As a well-known doctor, I guess he's maintaining some sort of privacy, so we won't mention it. But this doctor was in the news very recently, and was very outspoken, and that's why they killed his mortgage. And I just told me that the other day. I had not heard that. So I don't know how many times we're going to be beating this drum. Get your money out of the big six banks. Period. Take it over to a credit union if you have to, non-federally regulated credit union. Buy gold.
Buy silver.
The world's economy is going to be based on gold. Canada has no gold. Mr. T has more gold than Canada. You need gold.
What you're talking about, sucker?
That was, if I closed my eyes, I would be like, that is Mr. T too. That was an amazing Mr. T impression. No high degree of whiteness in that accent at all.
I couldn't resist.
Apparently.
Oh, sorry.
So gold, but if you can't do that, bank draft, take it over to a credit union, non-federally regulated. Again, we'll talk about that later.
And talking about money, because this whole show seems to be about money, because money makes the world go round, and love of money is the root of all evil. So let's talk about more evil, please. Right. And we don't do clickbait stuff, but we're going to talk about carbon tax, and we're going somewhere with it. So bear with us. You got to watch till the end. Big surprises.
The NDP is expressing reservations about the carbon tax. What does it signal that you have lost many premiers, and now you may be losing the NDP's support for your plan as well?
I feel for the NDP and for Jagmeet. This is a hard moment. There are political headwinds. There's a lot of political pressure. I'm certainly feeling it. Everyone should be feeling it. By folks out there who are worried about affordability, who are worried about climate change. And I don't know. My perspective is this is a time to actually do more to fight climate change, not less. To do more to put money in people's pockets. And it's not a handful of conservative politicians and premiers that are going to turn me away from continuing the fight against climate change, the fight for a better future, and the fight to put more money in people's pockets.
I had to say his own pockets.
Right. That poor blonde just looking around to see who she can meet to that day. Yes, over the line, I know. So he's just like, people don't have enough money because of the carbon taxes and also because we've driven prices out of control. Well, this puts more money. We need to take more money from them so we can put more money back in their pockets. Like not a single person in the liberal purview understands basic economy or economics. So
simple math.
Right. So he's
Simple
not
math.
backing down from this carbon tax thing. But it's not just him. He's got the backup, right?
Of course he has the backup. Why wouldn't he?
The carbon pricing, it's not just politicians, it's people as well. A new poll by Liaison Strategies found a majority of Ontario residents rank the cost of living higher than environmental protections, and a plurality are in favor of abolishing the price on carbon.
Wait a minute. The people want to be able to afford food more than they want to be able to save the planet.
Correct.
Huh.
Because you know what?
What?
If they're not here to enjoy the planet, then it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, but they're the carbon you want to reduce, right?
Even if it means eliminating their personal carbon price rebate. So can you tell Ontarians why your government's price on carbon is more important than their ability to make ends meet?
Now, here's the best part, because the one political point they keep hitting is, well, it's more money back in their pockets. And he just said that people don't care about carbon pricing back in their pockets. They just want the money in the first place. They don't want you to take any more of their money.
But the way we price carbon actually puts more money in the pockets.
I hear you not.
8 out of 10 families, like families in Ontario, where the cost of living is high, and where the need to fight climate change is clear with every wildfire, with every flood, with every drought.
Christy is trying not to laugh as he's saying this. You see her in the background.
I think she's dreaming of her next bump.
Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed that 8 out of 10 families get more money from the way we're pricing pollution, because we put a price on pollution and then we give that money back to Canadians.
Don't swallow your tongue now as you lie.
Yeah.
Don't watch your nose grow as you lie.
Right. Taking money back and then disproportionately giving it back to the people they choose. Kind of communism.
Kinda.
Little commie. So the other thing he said was the parliamentary budget officer. Did I say that right, Michael?
Yeah.
John, correct me if I'm wrong.
Parliamentary budget officer is on board and he agrees that this is a good thing and 8 out of 10 families are going to profit and benefit from this.
Yeah. Let's see what the parliamentary budget officer actually says.
That's true if you just look at how much people will pay in carbon tax directly and indirectly when they buy things or goods or services, minus the rebates they'll get. So that's true if you look across the income scale. The top 20% are usually those who end up worse off if you just look at the carbon tax paid minus the rebate. But when you look at the economic impact, so potentially reduced employment gains in affected sectors, or if you own shares of an oil and gas company or transportation company or various other sectors that will be affected, the return that you'll get is likely to be slightly lower than otherwise would be the case without a carbon tax. So that's also part of the economic impacts.
So from what you analyze, I mean, this is the political question is, are we better? Are we worse off, or are we covered? Are we kind of neutral, right? What is your answer to that question?
My answer to that is that we are likely to be worse off collectively because of the carbon tax and its economic impacts.
I call liar, pants on fire, Mr. Trudeau.
Exactly. And the other thing they're saying is that there's no advantage to the government. We're not getting any money from this, but don't forget they're increasing government by administering this. That's one way they are making more money. And I just want to say, just in interest of non-biases, he went on to say, but that doesn't include the benefits we get from reducing the carbon.
But he
carbon
said the
emissions
benefits, but then he said he didn't know what those benefits might
he kind of talked back and forth
because he realistically doesn't have a crystal ball.
You'll notice there are 3 apertures. They have a different purpose.
I'm not sure why that even came up right there.
I don't know.
Where did that even come from? What is
this, Michael?
Probably. So we'll get to you, Michael. If we're ignoring you, just send us a hey.
But I like that they say, Chrystia Freeland has been caught saying this, Trudeau has been caught saying this, that none of the carbon tax is going into the government's pockets, that they are not benefiting at all. Every dollar they collect is going back to the people. Until
Right. Oh, shoot. Okay, you jumped one, but okay.
Oh, did I jump one? I'm
Yes.
sorry.
How much has your government collected in carbon taxes?
Also an opportunity for me to point out that Manitoba families will be getting $1,200 this year.
Again, Minister, if I could just have the number, how much have you collected in carbon taxes?
The key point which Conservatives consistently are trying to keep from Canadians is that the price on pollution is completely revenue neutral.
Minister, it's a
the
very
money
straightforward
does
question.
not go
Canadians
in.
want the answer
The
to.
money
What is,
does not go into general revenues. It is returned to Canadians.
What is the dollar value of all carbon taxes collected since the tax was implemented?
The key point is that is money in the pockets of Canadians. For Manitoba families this year, it's going to be $1,200. That is making a real difference.
Just the number, Minister. How much has the government actually collected in carbon taxes?
As I said, the key point is it's all money that goes back to Canadians. It goes back to your constituents, my constituents, Daniel's constituents.
With the greatest of respect, it's not revenue neutral. In fact, the estimates, no, the Minister, the estimates say that you refuse to answer with giving accurate information, Minister. The government's own financial documents, your main estimates show that you've collected $20.7 billion in carbon taxes and has only paid out $18.6 billion since the carbon tax took effect. Oh, your government has collected over $2 billion out of the pockets of Canadians since the tax was implemented that you have not paid back.
So there you go. They are making money. They're making huge bank.
So where did that $2 billion go? I'm thinking Ukraine, to Zelensky's new house or his new yacht that he bought, and maybe going back to Trudeau so he can buy a house in Costa Rica or take another, $2 million vacation.
Right. But they say it's better for the people.
Of course.
Yeah.
It is better for the people. We don't have to see Trudeau.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but Bank of Canada would say otherwise.
Brown, and we are starting with MP Morantz for the first 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Woodrick, I want to ask you about the carbon tax. Back in your time at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, you said that the carbon tax represents higher costs for millions of Canadian families and businesses, causing significant economic pain in exchange for no economic gain. It's the economic pain part that I want to talk to you about as it relates to the Bank of Canada's decision yesterday to hold their policy rate at 5%. Right now, the inflation rate in Canada is roughly 2.8%. We had the bank governor at committee back on October 30th. He said that the carbon tax contributes 0.6% to inflation. Now, after April 1st, it goes up by 0.15. So today, the carbon tax represents 0.75% of the 2.8% inflation rate. So in other words, if the carbon tax had been eliminated, inflation yesterday, when the bank governor decided to hold fast on the overnight policy rate, would have been 2% right on target. From my perspective, it would be very difficult for the bank governor not to reduce the policy rate if the inflation rate was 2%. Would you agree with that analysis?
Unbelievable. So this carbon tax is now holding inflation to the point where we're not going to get lower interest rates.
No, exactly. The interest rates are going to keep going up.
Right. And this is where the rubber hits the road, right?
I mean, I would certainly agree that the carbon tax is a contributor to the inflation rate, and I think it is obviously not responsible for the entire rate of inflation, but it is a contributor, is a cost. So yes, I mean, this is a lever within government's control. Inflation is a mixture of factors outside the government's control and decisions that the government makes, and the carbon tax is a decision that the government has made, so it is a contributor to inflation. So yes, if assuming the bank would have lowered rates at 2% and the carbon tax wasn't present, and that brought the rate down to under 2%, which it sounds by that math it would, yes, I would agree.
So just read a story from a lady in Toronto whose mortgage was not renewed because they felt like she couldn't afford it at the higher interest rates that they're at. And so she's no longer paying her $2,000 a month mortgage. She is now paying $4,000 a month in rent as a result.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. The people are thanking you. Those quarterly checks of approximately $300 to $500 are going to save people like
Well,
her.
1,200. Let's be honest.
Oh,
there.
but it's 1,200 split into 4.
Okay.
Because that 1,200 is given out
Whoa,
in
whoa,
installments quarterly.
Whoa. What are you, like Polyev now? So they're
Just keeping you honest, Black.
right. But at least we know that the carbon pricing, the carbon
Mhm.
tax is reducing emissions. And here's a senator to back that up.
Understanding is there is no, there are estimates, there's modeling estimates of how much the price on carbon will reduce.
Now, just remember, modeling estimates, because we're going to come back to that.
Greenhouse gas emissions. My understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, is that there is no data specifically stating that the price on carbon resulted in an X amount of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and I don't even think that's possible, quite frankly.
So there is no data to prove that the carbon tax that they've implemented is actually doing any good. Now, we had another video that I could not grab the audio from. For some reason, it was just silent. But Todd is still with us. And Todd says Canada has 318 billion trees. That's basically 10 times the amount of trees that we need to offset our own carbon as a country.
So we are already at
Negative.
zero.
Yeah, -0, under zero.
And that is a Liberal cabinet member who is on our side, who
Right.
is not on Justin's side. So not only has Justin lost Jagmeet, the NDP, but he's also losing his own cabinet ministers. And I'd like to think he's losing the faith of the Canadian people.
Well, and his cabinet members are starting to, falter. His cabinet's falling apart. You got House Feather talking one side of the war, and you got everyone else talking the other side of the war. Like everything's breaking apart for these guys, yet they're still just fiddling while Rome burns.
Because you know why? They're really good tools. They do as they're told. They're soldiers of the agenda, and they're gonna, full steam ahead because that's what they're told to do. Speaking of full steam ahead, are we going full steam ahead now, or am I jumping the gun again?
Full steam ahead. Oh, I don't know. Just waiting. Yeah, let's go forward until we know otherwise. So what did we learn from that? We learned a few things. It was modeling, predictive modeling, which was used in virtually every aspect of the pandemic, scandemic, and is the modeling that was wildly off for all of that stuff. So this predictive modeling seems to be the thing that everyone's using now. And in 9 out of 10 cases, with a variable of 1, they're wrong every single freaking time. They're wrong.
But as long as they say they're using predictive modeling, they're not lying, and they don't have to back it up with evidence.
No. So it's not real actual data. It's a computer going, let's just throw the dice and see what happens. And that's what this modeling means. And they'll tell you that it's very accurate, but it's never accurate.
Michael.
Okay, Michael he's got a couple of things that he wants to add just before we get into the OSFI thing. And this is a great time to, this is
take
the
a drink of
entertaining
water
part.
and cheers, Michael.
Exactly. Oh, sorry, Michael. Yeah.
Don't remove Michael from the stage.
He does
what are you doing?
He does it to me all the time. Okay, what do you got? You're muted.
And Michael, we can't hear you.
There we go. Yeah, I just came across this interesting engineering post here. The video is a little dry. We'll play a moment of it afterwards. But yeah, it's showing that the UK has Dragonfire, aptly named, death ray weapon used to take out drones in Ukraine. So laser-directed energy weapon shoots an intense beam of light at its targets and can also take down aerial targets.
So they have freaking lasers, is what you're saying.
They're admitting to now having lasers,
But
is what you're saying.
Yeah, but they're not from the sky down to the ground lasers. They're ground to the sky lasers.
Correct.
The other way
This one is,
Michael.
But you'll see the size of it, and it doesn't seem inconceivable that one could go up there.
Here's from. It is not this part. we come back to this window, which, as well as the middle range viewing, it is also where the high energy comes out. And this is where your kilowatts of beam come out. There's all the talk about the £1 coin. So that beam of light forming a £1 coin at distance on the hillside, take that as an example, is all formed up from here. And the clever optics and the clever moving mirrors we're using here to focus that beam and stabilize that beam, they all come out of here and they're focused in that £1 coin at that distance. And that allows us to precisely target the part of the drone to quickly defeat that drone and move on to the next drone. And that's how we cope with these asymmetric threats, you know, these swarm of drones that we're looking to counter.
Thanks for watching.
Oh, you're welcome. That's great. See, I love the technical breakdown. So this is filled with a whole bunch of clever, basically, is what he said. Yeah.
But what I did get is that it's so exact it can hit a £1 coin pretty much anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So all you preppers looking at doing, you know, parallel societies, alternate societies, did you hear that? If they don't want you out there, they can hit you because they can hit a £1 coin.
Well, that's in the hilltop over there. So this is laser from ground up. You know, the ground down, like the sky down to the ground, that's just a conspiracy theory. They don't have that tech yet. Maybe another 10 years or so.
Yeah.
We lost it with the technology to get to the moon.
Wow.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. All the stuff NASA lost after the moon landing. Yeah.
Moon landing.
That's a whole nother show. Yeah. So there's that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Laser Wars.
Laser Wars. Isn't that the same guy who was talking about we're going to imprison you, but not really. You can still leave. We're just going to fine you in your 15-minute city in the UK. Isn't that the same guy?
I don't know. I hope not, because that man now has lasers.
That's exactly where my head went.
You.
Oh, we're not only going to fine you, we're going to give you a little wet spanking. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, wet spanking, like
wet spanking.
Hot light injection.
That's right.
Okay. Wow. Took a very light turn. Okay, so
on to OSFI. Let's just go full steam ahead.
Yeah.
This is what is so important. We've just covered a whole bunch of distractions that have been going on the last week or so. And we said it last year, September, when we came back from the UN SDG summit, that this was going to happen. Some people called us crazy. Some people said we were conspiracy theorists. Chris has been watching, waiting for them to finally make the announcement. And on April 11th, last week, they made the announcement. No longer conspiracy theory, no longer a plan in waiting. It has been announced, and we told you all back in September. Mm-hmm. And now we get to tell you again, but we actually get to tell you how it's going to be rolled out and rolled out ASAP.
Right. It's getting tiring, restraining ourselves from saying, I told you so. But here we are. Yeah, I almost missed this announcement because I was still wearing my Eclipse shades. But so now this came out on the 11th, and we were going to try and make this as exciting as possible. But I think the important part is remember how the carbon tax stuff that we went through was really a great snapshot of how things get done. So they create these models, this predictive modeling off of nothing. And then from that, they call that a study. And then they make that study
predictive modeling study,
right, the basis of legislation. And then they take the legislation and they make laws that affect you. And that's what happened with this carbon thing. And then their own liberal
it's what
senator
happened with the pandemic,
calls
it's what happened with carbon, and now it's happening with the banking system.
Right. And he says there's no data, right? So that's how it's done. It starts with the studies, and then it turns into legislation, and then we have to complain about the legislation. And this is really where we should be on it, is the seed of all this stuff, and not after they start passing the legislation. We should be looking at what studies are commissioned. And this is kind of a little important thing to add in here just before we get going, and that is the people versus little child. And that is a super important Supreme Court finding. The story is MP Littlechild represented a riding in Alberta, and they
New Brunswick.
Sure, somewhere in Canada. And then so the gist is, and we've read the judge's summation on this, so we've seen it firsthand. It's actually up on our website in Chris's research packs. So they were adamantly, the whole entire riding had signed petitions, were adamantly opposed to the bringing in of GST. And Littlechild voted for GST, which kind of drew the ire of his people, and they took him to court. And the judge's ruling was the MP has no obligation to fulfill the wishes of his people. And that was a shocker, because we all thought that they were supposed to serve the people. Not only that, the judge felt that it was egregious for the people to be bothering an MP during his time, because he's got parliamentary work to do. And the reason that they shouldn't be bothering him is because the government does all these studies, and the government's information is immutable, and because they bring in all these experts, and because they do their due diligence, when they come out and say a fact is a fact, then that fact is in fact a fact. Can't say that 5 times, but so that was the upshot of the people versus Little John. And so now they say that doesn't matter now if whatever study they do, if that study is included and doesn't get questioned in the Senate, then it is considered the truth. And that's why they say misinformation, disinformation, because we've commissioned these studies from our liberal buddies, or conservative buddies for that matter, because
government buddies,
right? That cop in Alberta, he went famous for speaking out in his uniform. He phoned his MP and said, do you have plans for the digital ID when you guys come into power? And he says, in fact, it's my job to bring in digital ID when the Conservatives get into power. So,
as Polyev is speaking at the other side of his mouth, saying, no, we're not bringing in digital ID. We're getting rid of CBDCs.
Yep.
Meanwhile, behind the curtain, telling his guys, get ready, it's go time. And boy, oh boy, is it ever go time, because April 11th, OSFI finally made the announcement. And here we go, guys.
Here it is.
Here it is.
Yeah. So we've done the hard work now. So this is OSFI. What is OSFI? OSFI is the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. The mandate of the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions Canada, OSFI, is to protect the rights and interests of depositors, policyholders, financial institution creditors, and pension plan members and beneficiaries, while allowing financial institutions to compete and take responsible risks.
Reasonable risks.
No, responsible.
No, reasonable.
Oh, I know. I made it better. OSFI fulfills its mandate by focusing on the safety and soundness of federally regulated financial institutions, FRFIs, federally regulated financial institutions. That acronym is going to come up a lot, so we'll just get it drilled in there. And federally regulated pension plans, FRPPs. So when we tell you, get your money out of the big 6 banks and federally regulated credit unions, this is why. They're under the purview of OSFI, and we want to get you out from underneath their control.
Standardized climate scenario exercise. This is the SDG Summit information that we brought back to you in September. Climate-related risks, including physical and transition risks, could have significant impacts on the safety and soundness of financial institutions and the broader Canadian financial system. Building financial resilience against intensifying climate-related risks requires institutions to address vulnerabilities in their business model, their overall operations, and ultimately on their balance sheet. In addition to FRFI's own internal climate scenario analysis to understand the resilience of their business model and strategy, FRFI will be required to complete standardized climate scenario exercises and report the results to OSFI on a periodic basis. These exercises will enable OSFI to assess aggregate exposures to physical and transition risks and compare FRFI approaches to climate scenario analysis.
Right. So if you're like me and it comes to politics or banking, you want to go into a defensive coma when this stuff comes up. And I get it. But
Please don't today.
This affects you more than anything else that's come through before. And always follow the money. Keep your eye on the money because it's always the money. Everything else is a distraction, right? Standardized climate scenario exercise, the SCSE, aims to measure climate risks that are arguably not reflected using traditional risk quantification. So here we are. We're going to make modeling, and we're going to use modeling because it's hard to measure it in actual traditional risk quantification techniques like actual data and proof.
Because there's no evidence or data to back up the fact that climate change actually exists. So we're just going to make it up, folks.
Models that use historical experience to measure risks. The SCSE will consider characteristics associated with individual exposures that are not typically used in risk quantification today, but may provide strong risk discrimination under future climate scenarios.
Risk discrimination, folks.
On
no
actual
DEI
stuff?
here.
Nope. Future climate scenarios that you guys are going to make up. The SCSE will not consider broad impacts of macro and economic stresses, since the FRFI stress testing and capital requirements already consider the impact of a stressed macro and economic environment. So basically, we're going to do this, and we're not going to include global economy and any global risks and pressures. That's not part of our data today.
No.
As with guideline B15, we will not get into that today. All FRFIs except for foreign bank branches will be expected to submit a completed SCSE workbook and questionnaire. So it's voluntary, but also not voluntary. FBBs and FRPPs are encouraged to participate in SCSE. OPP, yeah, you know me. We would also like to thank colleagues at the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, Office of the Comptroller of Currency, and the United Nations Environment Program Finance Initiative, providing valuable feedback on an earlier draft of the SCSE.
United Nations, key word. Remember, we keep saying it's really not our government doing this to us. Our governments are just puppets and tools of the United Nations, who are also puppets and tools of the BIS and IMF.
The UN is the
money.
puppet. Yes, UN is the puppet.
The puppet.
It's the IMF and the BIS that are running the show. So there you go.
So standardized climate scenario exercises. So this is something that all the banks have to do. They have to identify 3 key objectives for the standardized climate scenario exercise. And the objectives are, there's 3 of them. Raising awareness and encouraging a strategic orientation with FRFIs to better understand the potential exposures to climate change. So again, they're guessing what their exposure is to climate change. They're encouraging the building of FRFIs' capacity to assess the impact of climate-related catastrophe events and policies and to connect climate scenario analysis exercises. So they're not scientists, they're not environmentalists, but they are expected to create scenarios that encourage the assessment of impact of climate change. And number 3, they have to establish a standardized quantitative assessment of climate-related risks, both transitional and physical in nature. So bankers are now being required to pretend that they are environmentalists or climate change scientists so that they can figure out what their financial risks are when it comes to climate change in the future.
Right. And basically climate change risks means forest fires and floods, where transitional means consumer trending into like from gas to electric vehicles and, stuff like that, basically. So, trending stuff. So they've got to create a baseline in order to get any modeling, any scientific data, anything like that. You need to create a baseline in order to work from, so you know what's up and what's down. So here's how they're going to make that work. It's a 2-pronged approach. Number 1, they're going to do a top-down approach. OSFI will define and develop the 2024 SCSE methodology, scenarios, adjustment parameters, and calculations. So OSFI is going to make the baseline. That's going to come. And all other data is going to be derived from OSFI's baseline. So they're making that up. We'll find out how in a minute. And then the bottom up FRFIs will identify exposures, classify them into relevant sectoral and geographical segments, and perform calculations. Number one, OSFI develops the SESE methodology, the baseline. OSFI prescribes scenarios, tells them what risk parameters, formulas, etc., and they'll tell them with what parameters they get to make these scenarios up. So they're not just risk scenarios, they are prescribed risk scenarios. And then the banks and whatnot can assess impacts to their exposures using the prescribed information from OSFI.
So at the end of the day, it's OSFI who is basically in charge of everything. Real-time data doesn't really come into play. Real-time scenarios do not come into play. It's all going to be based on predictive modeling. And hey, banks, you just throw in your numbers based on what your ledgers say.
Right.
And we'll figure out what your risks are and whether you're allowed to do them or not. Because remember, Basel IV, asset-backed banking, has come into play, and they now have to have assets to back up what their ledgers say.
Right. I actually think Basel IV is still waiting to drop, but we said it would have a climate change component, and this is how it's going to work. So,
standardized climate scenario exercise, balance sheet assumptions. Climate scenario analysis requires FRFIs to project future balance sheets. So basically, they're doing budget forecasting on their balance sheets. These projections can be described as dynamic or static. The SESE will use a static balance sheet approach for the transition risk modules of the SESE specifically. Static means it never changes.
Right.
And we all know, anybody who knows anything about accounting or balance sheets or how to run a business knows your balance sheet is literally a living document with regards to your budget. And you're always referring your budget back to your balance sheet to see how close your budget actually is. And your balance sheet changes literally from day to day to month, to week to year to year. It never remains static. And yet OSFI is telling the FRFIs that their balance sheets must remain static now in order to project future balance sheets.
I think that's fair. I can't really put my finger on any major changes since 2018. So, right.
So balance sheets are going to be done. The banks have to do their climate scenarios at 5-year intervals from 2030 all the way to 2050.
Right.
So these are the scenarios they have to work with, and they have to submit these to OSFI to make sure that they are protecting their risks.
So basically, they're making their models on what could be a risk in 20, 30 years from now.
Yes.
Based on what?
Based on their Q4 2023 financial balance sheets.
Right. The first time it's kind of been a little bit stable in 3 years. And that is going to be the snapshot they use as a baseline for all of their predictive modeling.
For the next 20 years. Voila. For each 5-year interval, FRFIs will perform forward-looking calculations that assume the balance sheet runs off. The SESE instructions include illustrative examples of how credit risk factors are applied using a Q4 2023 static balance sheet and forward-looking calculations for the credit risk module. The SESE instructions also include illustrative examples of how market risk shocks are applied using a static balance sheet assumption for the market risk module. So no matter what happens, no matter what's going on today, they are not allowed to look at real-time scenarios. They're only allowed to look at Q4 2023 as their base year. That will be the first year end that some FRFIs will report under IFRS 9. And assuming balance sheets are static is a limitation of the SASE. Real balance sheets are dynamic and reflect FRFI's evolving views of risks. However, dynamic balance sheets introduce significant complexity that does not align with the foundational nature of the SESE, because SESE does not deal in realities.
Right. You want to do a real model? Real model? No. That's too complex. Okay. Like the real world. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. OSFI is developing the SCSE transition risk factors using two implementations of these scenario narratives. Both implementations of the scenario narratives provide a 30-year scenario time horizon, and therefore the transition risk modules of the SCSE will also consider a 30-year time horizon. We have used scenario data developed by the networks for the greening of the financial systems and GFS, the international standard setter for the climate scenario data, specifically NGFS phase 3 scenarios. The big part's right here at the bottom, but
they're breaking it down into several different things for them to look at in their exercise. And one of the main things is the industry sector and regional sector classifications. A sectoral approach avoids data challenges associated with the lack of reliable greenhouse gas emissions data by using industry classification as a proxy to assess the impact of different climate scenarios.
So there they say it right out. They don't have any actual data. They say it. So we're going to create a baseline based on nothing. And then these banks are going to prescribe a risk to things that haven't existed based on a baseline that doesn't exist. And that risk is going to be factored into whether or not people get a loan and other things. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so in the absence of detailed data, FRFIs could rely on proxy data, such as the location of a counterparty's headquarters.
So if we don't have data for Canada, not to worry, we can use Africa.
Yes,
we
that's
can
right.
use Africa in our climate scenario exercise for our regional sector, because we know Africa is the same as Canada. And don't worry, we have a bank in Africa. We have a head office in Africa. We own buildings in Africa.
Sorry, man,
so
we can't renew your mortgage because there's just too many damn zebras here in Alberta. That's basically how that'll play out. So the regional sectors are laid out there. And so that's basically, you can use a proxy and you can mix and match. You can do whatever you want. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be basing that on real world scenarios. So this sets the banks up to say, hey, this is a higher risk. We're going to have to mitigate that risk. This sets the bank up to kind of take advantage of people for money, but banks wouldn't do that, would they?
Oh, no.
No, I
not
don't.
banks in Canada anyway, or would they?
Or would they?
Market risk, climate transition risk could significantly impact the value of financial assets such as stocks and bonds. As countries implement climate policies to reduce their overall emissions, the resulting transition risk drivers such as changes in policy, technology, and adjustments in general consumption patterns are expected to impact asset market valuations.
And here it is.
Investors in financial markets could demand higher risk premiums for investing in assets of firms that are particularly vulnerable to economic consequences of transition risk, such as the emission-intensive firms.
So that really is worth digging into for a second, in the sense that, let's say you have a trucking company and things have been tough because the economy has been kind of tough, and you're having trouble making ends meet because carbon tax has kept the interest rates high. So you've
or your Harold Jonkers, whose trucking company is on trial for being at the Freedom Convoy, and now he's got these massive legal bills. But he's got a trucking company, so not to worry. He's going to go to the bank, borrow the money to pay off his legal bills, and he's going to borrow against his assets, his trucks.
So they say, okay, you got $1 million in trucks, no problem. And then one day he gets a phone call from the bank. Oh, by the way, your diesel burning trucks are a high risk because they're contributing to climate change. And so therefore flooding in Africa, our headquarters. And so now we have to devalue your trucks. And now they're only worth $100,000. We're going to have to call that loan back in because you actually don't have any collateral anymore.
Sorry.
Right. That's a real thing that they're laying out here. That really is.
Or based on the higher premiums, you know what, maybe we can give you that loan, but instead of giving you it at 5% interest, which is our prime rate now for our commercial investors, we can give you the loan at 24% because you're such a high risk to us because you don't have assets that value that we can hold value against.
Right. So now you can start seeing why climate change, or how they're going to use climate change to take your money. Okay, this is you.
Exposures to properties that are powered or heated by carbon-intensive sources such as fossil fuels or natural gas may be impacted by the transition to net zero.
And there's your mortgages.
And here's your properties, guys. This is important to anybody who owns any property. This also includes your vehicles, okay? Land, vehicles, mortgages, buildings. Property values may decrease relative to properties that use renewable power or electric heating sources as real estate buyer preferences change with the transition and due to the cost required to upgrade such buildings to an efficient heating source. These relative decreases in value may impact borrower PDs and LGDs given the risk discrimination associated with loan to value ratios for real estate exposures. So this means if your house is heated by a natural gas furnace and you have a natural gas stove and you have a natural gas dryer, guess what? Your $1 million home is now being devalued to $500,000 because you're using a fossil fuel to rent your home or to heat and run your home. But I tell you what, you change all of those systems out and maybe we'll increase the value of your home to maybe 800,000, but it's not going to be the full $1 million because you were a climate risk.
Right. And before you say no, we'll think of it this way. Nobody else wants to buy a house. It's going to be devalued at some point. Maybe not. And then they'll end up having to do all those changes. So they're not going to pay you $1 million for a house where they got to swap out all the systems.
That's right. You just lost value overnight.
Right.
And I'm a realtor, and what everybody wanted, natural gas, and they wanted natural gas fireplace. And if they could get a gas stove and a gas dryer, those things people paid premiums for. Well, those premium items are now going to be a deficit on their balance sheets.
Right.
So you're not going to get premium value for it. And that home that you thought was worth $1 million because of these premium items is now devalued overnight because of those items.
And the second point lays it out even further. As carbon tax policies lead to an increase in energy prices, borrowers may be under high levels of stress due to the higher costs of maintaining and operating these properties. This additional stress may impact borrowers' PDs. So there you go. Now that gas burning home, which was hugely efficient not that long ago, right, is now carbon taxed out of into oblivion, and nobody wants to pay for that kind of taxation.
So you just lost value in your home, value in your property, and you just decreased your chances of renewing your mortgage, of using your home as collateral on personal lines of credit, to buy a car, to pay for your kids' education. Those values are now gone. And borrowers employed in industries exposed to higher transition risk may face additional financial hardship given shifts in the labor market. These shifts may impact borrower PDs. So guess what? You work for, Union Gas. Well, now you might be out of a job soon. So again, your carbon risk, your climate change risk to the bank has just exponentially went up. It used to be a good thing to work for these companies because it meant you usually had a nice, safe, secure job with a guaranteed fairly good income. But now that fairly good income at that stable job has now just cost you the ability to renew your mortgage.
And just in case you're just joining us, this is not legislation yet. This is modeling to set the base for legislation.
They're talking May, bringing this in and making it active in May.
Yes.
They want the banks to do this by May.
Which is very much in line with the timeline for CBDCs, UBIs, digital ID, all those things, open banking, I'm forgetting one, but OSFI also considered how the transition away from carbon-intensive economy may cause higher inflation, which may impact interest rates and put additional stress on mortgage borrowers. However, unlike the possible impacts listed above, interest rates would impact all borrowers, and the risks associated with rising interest rates are already reflected in the regulatory policies, such as the borrower stress in Guideline B20. We never read that. Residential mortgage underwriting practices, procedures,
Well,
and
right
capital
now,
regimes. So, but that just one
okay,
sec
well, I
goes
was gonna
back
say the
to
stress
just
test
one
right
sec.
now is
This
2%
just goes
above.
back to what we were talking about before, where the carbon tax is holding the interest rates up.
Right. But the stress test, which has been in place here in Ontario, and I believe across Canada, the stress test has been in place for about 2 or 3 years now, where borrowers no longer qualify for what the actual interest rate is. They have to qualify for the interest rate plus another 2% above that interest rate. So that's what the stress test is. So they're saying that as a borrower, that stress test is going to exponentially increase. So you no longer qualify if mortgage rates are 5%, you currently have to qualify at 7%. Well, now they're saying that 7% might actually exponentially increase based on your job because you're in a fossil fuel field, or based on your car because you drive a diesel or a gas-fired car, or based on the heating system in your home, or any number of those things, because you don't meet the climate scenario risk predictability modeling tests that the banks now have to
and
go through.
Plus 25% interest rates at any given reorganization of your mortgage. So understanding that there could be data gaps in heating and energy sources for FRI's real estate exposures. So lack of empirical data. The use of data proxies will be permitted in this module. Represents a significant burden. For example, if an FRFI does not know the heating source of the properties associated with their real estate lending and investment portfolios, they may refer to StatsCan. This table provides percentages of heating source types at the provincial level for 35 census metropolitan areas, and use of any data proxies should be rationalized and documented. So there is a significant lack of actual data being used for both the baseline that are going to go into a final report that will cause legislation to allow banks to take your money and allow banks to basically do what they want. Now, this is also a mandate from the BIS under Basel IV. So this is global banking. This is the way it's going. Basically, this is our government setting them up for a win in our country. And that's the thing to keep in mind. You know, it's not Pfizer that's the evil company here, although they are. It was our government that signed that horrible vaccine into the bodies of people. They said that it was a risk. They said it was, our government signed that contract anyway.
But why did they?
Oh, that was interesting.
Our internet is going a little bit crazy. I'm sorry if we lose you folks, but
we're hardwired in.
Doesn't like in right now. When they don't like what we're saying, when we're over the target, we get messed with. So
anyway,
we apologize if
we went out
down.
at this end. And here our screen went out at this end. I don't know if we lost from the other
we
end.
did go,
okay.
And we're fuzzy on this end too. So
anyway, so there was that, and then it's we're all directed at the WHO. The WHO wants to take all our power and take our sovereignty away, but it's the governments that's going to sign that into power. They're only at the mercy of the power of the governments. So it's our government that's going to do that. It's not the WHO. It's our government that did the Pfizer thing, not Pfizer.
But why is our government doing it? They're not doing it because they want to do it. They're doing it because they're the puppets of the UN, who are the puppets of the BIS and IMF, who is bringing all of this into fruition.
Right. So that is OSFI. It's under their announcements. There's so much more. There's like 7 other studies that we have to go through that we just scratched the surface. We did not do the full extent of this justice. There was a lot of stuff we left out. But basically they are giving banks the carte blanche to say, oh, hey, this is a risk. We're going to have to charge more interest. This is a risk. We're going to have to revise your mortgage.
But not only that, because of asset-backed banking coming in, the banks are being mandated to move away from fractional banking. They must go into asset-backed banking.
Correct.
So because of going into asset-backed banking, not only are they bringing in ESG scores, but they now are bringing in carbon scores as well. And they will be penalized if their carbon scores are too high. And therefore, the domino effect means we and you out there didn't buy into their incentives. And we all said no. And so the government, can you guys say all that again?
Can we say that? Yeah. So here we go.
Oh yeah, freezing.
Yeah, our connection hasn't changed. But that's it. I mean, OSFI, this whole thing is the seed of new legislation. We've seen what happens when legislation gets out of control. We've seen carbon pricing. So we really think that this is the most important thing going on right now, because all of the banking is converging. And again, we can't say it enough. Keep your eyes on the banking and follow the money, because that's really where the power lies. When we taxes, then you can't freeze nothing, and you ain't got nothing to freeze.
That's it. And
right?
you all wanted to know how it was that we would own nothing and be happy. This is how. Everybody said they can't take my house away. Well, you're right, they can't, but you can definitely lose it because you no longer qualify to pay for it.
Correct.
Because of your scores.
Wow. Pat ourselves on the back. That was a lot of information through tonight, and I know it wasn't exactly entertaining, but it was super important. We're back.
I am sorry, guys. We are totally freezing, and I don't know what to do with that. But for those of you who are still with us, that can still see us, that can still hear us, get your money out of the bank. It's super important because the banks own your money once you put it in there. Pay off your debts as quickly as you possibly can, because that will buy you time.
Yeah.
And on top of that, get in your MPs and your MPPs' faces. Now is the time, not when it happens, not at the end of May when the CBDC start rolling out, not when all of these new OSFI rules come in and the banks are now basing their ability to loan to you or even do business with you based on these OSFI rules. Do it now. Get in front of your bankers, get in front of the tellers, get in front of your MPs, get in front of your MPPs. Talk to the people in the stores, talk to the lady who serves you coffee, the lady who packs your groceries, the man at the bus stop. It doesn't matter. You need to get this information out. You need to start educating the people around you, and you need to take action. Unless you don't care about living in a house, unless you don't care about having assets in your name, unless you don't care about having control of your money, which then gives you the control over your life. If you are totally happy handing everything over to the government and becoming a child again, where they do everything for you, tell you what to eat, when to sit down, when to move, what job you can have, when you can play video games, when you can have a beer, when you can have a pizza, and when you can go out with your friends, then sit back and do nothing.
Right. Yeah, it's a bug's life for you. Yeah, so I think that covers it. We've been talking about this, and this puts actual flesh on the skeleton that we've kind of been talking about. This is how they're going to do it, step by step by step. It all comes down to the money. So again, the way we combat that is taking our money out of the banks, and they'll give you the runaround, and we want you to film that. We want you to film how hard it is to get your own money out of the bank, get a bank draft, take it to a credit union if you have to.
Share it with everybody. And hey, you know what? Don't take our word for this. Go on the government's website and read for yourself. Pages and pages and pages and pages, but read for yourself.
Boring.
Don't take our word for it.
Yeah.
Google OSFI. It's right there in black and white. We love you, and we do what we can so that you can spend your time doing valuable actions, and in between spending a little bit of time loving your family and your friends.
Right. Oh, awesome. Thank you for that. We'll just leave that up for a couple of seconds. Head over to tfmreport.com, sign up for our newsletter. You're going to get more news than you could possibly imagine every Sunday morning. Just all the stuff that is not clickbait that you may have missed under the radar.
And the stuff we didn't cover on the show, we most certainly throw it in our
for
newsletter.
everything we cover on the show, there's 10 things we don't. And that's always, I think I put out like 55 stories to go through this weekend.
The last 2 weeks, for sure.
So if you're news nerd,
newsletter heavy.
Yeah, this one's for you. Okay. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you on Thursday. What day is it? Thursday. See you then, everybody. Bye.
Bye.